Hello, my name is Brian Brott, and welcome to Interviewing People, where I talk to a variety of people about how they ended up where they are today, what they learned from their mistakes, and what advice they have for our futures. Today, Dustin Drerup of Beastcraft Animatronic Props is with us to talk about his career journey. Dustin has an interesting story, so enjoy the show. He's a Van Buren graduate, graduated in 2002, so he was a freshman the very first year I was teaching, which is hard to believe. And now he is doing this, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his experience at Van Buren, his experience after Van Buren, and what has led him to start Beastcraft and have that as a career today. So, Dustin, thank you very much for joining us, and we'd love to hear what were some of your experiences in high school, and did any of those contribute to where you are today?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely. When I was when I was at Van Buren in high school, was my senior year, there was a gentleman that came to talk to us he was a graduate from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. So that's where I ended up going to school. So he came in and he talked to us about what he did, and he was currently working at Life Formations, which is a huge company in Bowling Green. So they do the same thing that we do. They do animatronics, but they do it for museums. So it's quality-wise, it's a lot higher than what we do. The complexity, more like talking presidents, like if you go in and you would see an ex-president and it would, explain to you everything that they're doing. Very, very big, very good company. So he worked there, and he came and talked to us, and he said, you can go to school and learn special effects and have a career doing special effects. And I was really into that. That really struck a chord with me, and so I knew that's where I wanted to go. There was nothing that was going to change my mind. That's where I was going to go. So I went to school there, and it was probably about halfway through. I did an associate degree, which is 2 years. So it was close to the end of my the end of my first, that I kind of realized it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. My student loan bills were racking up very quickly. I had loans for school, for living expenses, because you had to live in the dorms of the school. Everything was it was too much. So I went to the counselors or whoever it was that was running that was working with me through my time at the school. And I said, I wanted to get out, and I was going to maybe look at going to somewhere in Columbus, in Ohio. And they basically told me that they were not accredited, and if I left, I would be starting from scratch. So that meant that I would be, having no credits. Every credit that I had accumulated would be gone. And I would be starting over, and I would have, my student loan bill, which was already big, and I would have nothing to show for it. So I had the option to either stop and just kind of restart, or finish and get my associates. And I chose to finish it and finish the second year and get my degree. So I graduated, and honestly, that was the first time that I had ever even heard the term accredited, or what that even meant. And just to kind of explain that a little bit more, is just some schools are accredited, and when you get your credits for your different classes, whether it be a math class, social studies class, or something like art related, those classes would transfer to another school if you wanted to go to that school, and you would just continue on just like nothing happened. You switch schools, and you have 10 credits, you take your 10 credits with you, and you go from there. So a creative school or an art school that I had gone to was not accredited, and they would not transfer anywhere. They wouldn't even transfer to another art school. And that was shocking information to find out already so far into it. But I changed, or I finished the school out, and you know, at that point, that was reality. Like once I graduated, student loans were due, and that, you know, I was off on my own. So the school did try to place you. I mean, they want to place you because they want to have their students in careers so that they have those numbers to kind of reflect on and say, well, we have 75% placement rate, you know, 90% placement rate. So they work to try and place me. And so they helped me get an interview at Life Formations, which is where I was in Perrysburg at the time. There in Bowling Green, it's very close. And that's where that guy that came to talk to us had gone to work. So keep in mind that my original plan was to move to California and go work in movies, and I wanted to do special effects. But that student loan hanging over my head was just too big, and there was just no way. So I had to move back in with my mom, you know, when I graduated. So I go to the interview at Life Formations, and it was a very bad experience. I thought I would have the job because I just was looking for an entry-level job. I had the degree, and I thought, you know, this is it. I'll go in and I'll do good in the interview. I'll get the job. And when I got there, the lady that was doing the interview just shredded me. She destroyed me. I'll never forget it to this day. Like she was condescending. She could have cared less that I was there. I was like a burden, like taking her time. And it was not what I expected at all. And I remember, you know, leaving that interview and going to the gas station, and I was outside pumping gas, and I was just, whoa, I just knew that this was going to be hard. And I knew that, you know, I don't want to say I made a mistake, but I want to say, like, I knew that, like, that I had gone down a hard path, and it really had. So, you know, there were a couple other things that really kind of set me out on my path. Like after that, you know, that job interview was really one of those, like, really eye-opening experiences. Another one was I was working at a candle factory. So I got a job because I had to pay my student loans. So I signed up with a temp agency. And a temp agency is a place you can go when you really need a job. And they just put you in anywhere that you might be able to do something. And so I got a job at a candle factory. And it was Swan Creek Candle, which is up near Toledo. And I was running line, just stacking bottles onto a conveyor belt, and they would get pushed on. So while I was there, the school contacted me, and they asked about, you know, what I was doing. I told them I was at a candle factory. They said, "Oh, you're in your field, so we're gonna mark you down as placed." And I was like, "You better not! Like, you cannot mark me down as placed. I'm not using my degree. I'm not where I want to be. You cannot mark me placed." So I don't know if they did or not, but they wanted to. And so when I was there at the candle factory, I worked there for a while. I presented them with a sculpted candle, which they had nothing like that. So I did a candle with like a relief of a swan, made a mold of it, and presented it to them, and they didn't want it. They were just like, they didn't understand it. They didn't want to go with it. So I ended up, you know, quitting that job. That was pretty devastating to just kind of have that thrown back in my face. I did it on my own time, so I wasn't even doing it when I was working there. I was just kind of like, I really want to just get my hands dirty and do whatever I can do, and they didn't take it.
So that's where you actually created a candle, hoping they might actually start producing that style of candle and so forth. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like say, if I can show you my skills, like I can do more than just put stuff onto a conveyor belt.
Right.
That's what it was. It was unloading trailers. It was bad. It was a rough job for
Right.
sure. Um, but they didn't want it, and and that's just kind of how that theme will go through every job I had, where I just try to take it as far as I can, and when I can't take it anymore or I don't have any more opportunities to learn, I just had to move on. And you know, I got a call while I was at the candle factory. I had a message from McFarlane Toys, which made Spawn toys and stuff like that. They're a pretty big toy company. So they called and left me a message, and I was like on pins and needles for 2 weeks waiting for them to call me back, because they had called me and I returned the call. And I was telling the guy I worked with on the line and stuff, I was like, I got this call, and he's like, you got to take that job if they offer it to you. It would require moving and stuff, and it was a big deal. And when I did get the call back, the guy just said, hey, I wanted to reach out to you. I didn't mean to keep you hanging. He's like, your portfolio was really good. I just wanted to give you some encouragement. And I was like, what? 2 weeks just to get we're not hiring kind of thing. And that was that was a hard time. I was working at the candle factory. I was working at a pizza place, doing 2 jobs, daytime, evening, and just throwing as much as I could on my student loan, and that was my experience right after college, and it was not a good one. It was not positive. But I went to, everything was just kind of not going well there. So I went to Columbus to be with Jeff Middleton and Mark Heitkamp, who I'm sure you remember, Mr. Brott. They were in Columbus at the time. They're at Ohio State. They had a room in their place open up, and I said, I'm out of here. I gotta switch gears. So I came to Columbus and got a job doing landscape. So I landscaped for about a year, and that ended up, I was washing dishes on the side, just trying to make ends meet. And, so that ran its course very quickly. I ended up getting a job teaching guitar. So the whole thing with landscaping fell through. And it's kind of weird. Like, I'm sitting here telling you this, and I start to feel like I'm rambling it, but each thing really does lead to the next. And that's one of the big things that I think everyone finds as they go through life, is really just one event to the next that really is a chain reaction. So, I did the landscaping thing, and I came out of a winter that was pretty bad. The guy was doing snow removal, and there was hardly any snow. So, Jeff and Mark and I were all working together, and we were working for the landscape company, had a really bad winter, and we were doing dishes, anything we could through temp agencies, just to keep on. All of us had student loans that we were trying to keep on top of, trying to pay for living expenses. And, we came out of that winter, and the owner of the business said, I'm going to give you $1 an hour raise for the next year. And I said, see ya. I said goodbye. This is not working. And we were practically starving for a winter. And I just happened to be on Craigslist, and I found a job teaching guitar, which is something I had always been interested in. And that became something that really kind of, getting that job teaching guitar kind of took me on a completely different path. And I kind of settled into this mindset that was kind of like, I can make really good money teaching guitar. It's not great money, but when you're landscaping and you're struggling and doing all this other stuff, really was the most money I had made up to that point. And I thought, if I can't make monsters, then I will just help people, I'll just teach. And at least I'm sharing like a love for something, doing something positive, and I'm able to use that money to help pay my loans. So hang on just a second. Pardon me. So I started teaching guitar and really liked it. Got into doing kids bands, and I started a program where it was like rock and roll bands for teaching little kids like how to play in a group. And we'd take them out and we would do shows around the Columbus area. And it turned really kind of snowballed and like just kind of took off, and it was very successful. So, I'm doing that, and I got a pretty good, I don't know if I would call this a good break, but the owner of the studio that I was teaching at had a house that was a mansion that was in a very rough part of town. It had been left to essentially rot. Like it was in mid-renovation and they just bailed on it. They weren't putting any more money into it. So I lived there without heat and without hot water. And I had one room that was fine. Everything else was destroyed, like walls busted out, just a complete construction site. So I lived there for a year and I paid $20 a month. And so during that time, I paid off my student loan by paying, everything I was making, I paid to my student loan because I had no living expenses. It was not the best scenario, but I really think it was something that helped me kind of get that foothold and shed that weight of the student loan. And then, during that time, like while I was teaching guitar, I was also working at pizza places. I've worked at pizza places from college on. I've always had like a secondary gig doing pizza, just to kind of help throw that extra money on the student loan. And again, it always comes back to at that point in my life, it really was the student loan. And in hindsight, it may not have been that much, but for someone who never owned a house, never had a car payment, that's a lot to hit you when you first get out of school. So it's very important to know that that's a reality that you're going to end up facing. But once I was free of that, that really opened me up to do whatever. I mean, I had been, essentially paying all this money on the student loan. Now I had that money to feel like I was more free to make decisions and take more chances because I didn't have that hanging over my head, essentially. I didn't have to worry about where my next paycheck was coming from. So during the time that I was teaching guitar, I met a student's mom who I ended up marrying. And we were eventually divorced. It's not a very good story, but I met her. And the relevance is that when I met this mother of a little girl that I was teaching, as she got to know me, she found out like where I went to school and what I was into. And I had come to Columbus years prior to go to a place called Scare Factory, which was another company in Columbus, in the Ohio area that did special effects. There's not a lot of opportunities. These places are few and far between in the Ohio area. So I went there. I went pretty much every place I could think of that could do monster stuff or special effects, animatronics, and that kind of stuff. So I met her. As we're talking, it comes out that she is really good friends with the art director of Scare Factory. So she connects me with him and he hires me, not based on my degree or my anything, just hires me. He has no idea I went to school for it. He's not seen my portfolio. He doesn't know anything about my job experience. They just throw me in as a temporary worker. And that was another very big foothold to send me on to the path that I ended up on. So I started working at Scare Factory. And, that's like just such a weird thing because I think back on that, like going to that job interview, or not that job interview, I'd say the lack of a job interview. Just going there and just saying, I'm going to this place. I had my portfolio. I had my resume. I went there on a Saturday thinking they would have an office with the receptionist and I could like leave my stuff with them, and the guys that were living in Columbus at the time, and I was not living in Columbus at this time. I would have been in Toledo still. but they were all at Ohio State. And so I called them up and I said, hey, I got to get to this place and get my information turned in. So I came down, and Jeff, who's been a friend of mine forever, drove me to Scare Factory. We found it, which we didn't even have, Google Maps wasn't even a thing. We had to find it. We had to literally find it just from like directions online, and go there, and it's just a locked door. Like, it looks like a closet, and there's no one to leave my stuff with. And and I think that is another very valuable lesson to anyone of your students that would be watching this, is like, if I had persisted in that, my life could have been completely different. I went there and didn't know what to do. There was just a door. It was not like I was told it would be. Like, there was no one to give my resume to. There was no one they couldn't have cared less about who I was or what I was doing. So if you have a place that you're pursuing, don't give up. Go there every day. Go there 3 times a day until you find someone that you can talk to in person and give your stuff to them, and see if you can get an internship there. And I think, had I not given up so easily, that could have been easily a point in my life that would have veered me on a different path. But I was teaching guitar, and I met this mother, and she introduced me to the art director who hired me. And so I worked at Scare Factory for 5 years, and I taught music lessons while I was there. So again, pulling double duty, working 2 jobs, working myself to death essentially. And during that time that I was at Scare Factory, the lady that I was teaching music lessons for, I had become very close to a lot of the parents. I've been there a long time and worked very closely with everybody. And a parent brought it to my attention that they'd been with me for a long time, and they were saying the rates were getting crazy. I said, rates? What are you talking about? So the owner of the studio had raised the price of lessons many times and not ever told me or offered me a raise or anything. And it was like, and I was very shocked that I had given so much loyalty and created so much for this person. And that's really was a bad experience to have that happen. I left almost immediately and on very bad terms, and I set up shop to teach lessons on my own because I had already established the clientele. I had created programs and done a lot with her school that she was running, and she burned me, and I just left. So that brings me to another very important point that I would tell to anyone who is into doing creative work. Never, ever, ever sign a non-compete. Never do it. So when you do creative work, most of the time you are what would be considered a contractor. So you're not an employee. That means you're responsible for your own taxes. It means you're responsible for your own insurance. And I've come across this pretty much my entire post-college career, is being an independent. So what people will do is they will present you with a non-compete, and you have to sign it in order to work there. And non-competes are not a bad thing. If you work for someone who is going to make you an employee and they're going to cover your taxes, they're going to cover your health insurance, they're going to pay you an amount that you can live off of, then it is worth signing the non-compete. But the problem is that more often than not, the companies that want you to sign a non-compete are not going to take care of you. That's why they have the non-compete in the first place. So just be very cautious of that. And this will come up again because I've had 2 instances with non-competes in my life that have kind of derailed me. So I signed the non-compete, and I completely disregarded it because that's just the kind of person I am. And I was like, I don't care. I'm setting up my own studio, and I set up my first business, which was Rock Factory LLC, and it was a business that specialized in rock and roll music lessons, and we had little league rock and roll bands that we would take around. And it was very successful, but on the business end, we made a lot of mistakes, and it was just a huge learning experience. It was, and I mean, I would say it was an awesome learning experience, actually, because I had never done anything like that. I had to establish an LLC. I had to go through the whole process of creating a business, and I was no longer going to work for someone. I was going to be the business itself. And that was huge. And we made some mistakes for sure. Not the least of which was that we were sued by the lady who I worked for, and it didn't go very far, but it went far enough to inflict some pretty substantial financial damage. And if I would have never signed that paper, it would have never been the case. So during that time, I'm working at music lessons, now started Rock Factory. I am still at Scare Factory at this point. So I was at Scare Factory for 5 years and just learning everything I possibly could. Scare Factory was a terrible, terrible job, but I was doing what I wanted to do, and there was something in that was I had never had. That was the first job that I had used my degree, and I would say used my degree loosely, but I was doing what I wanted to do, and it paid so badly. I was there 5 years. I was never given a raise, and that was very common. People that worked there for 10 years never had a raise. They just did it because it was cool, because you couldn't do it anywhere else. And that wasn't enough for me. I didn't like the fact that the owner was not a good businessman. He didn't take care of his employees. He didn't take care of his customers. He was not a good person. But I worked there until I couldn't learn anything else. And so I ended up in a position where I asked to go to the welding department and learn welding. And he just blew me off for 2 months, and that was the end of that, because if I wasn't learning, and if you're not getting paid well, that's one thing. If you're learning, if you're not making a lot of money and you're learning, there's a very big value in that. But when you're not making money and you're able to live off of, and you're not making benefits, health benefits, insurance, and you're not learning, that is a time to move on to something else. And I had already gone through the process of starting Rock Factory. So I knew how to start a business, and I said, I'll just do this myself. I mean, really, I was making $10 an hour. And after taxes are taken out, that is, that's not where you want to be at 27, 28 years old, going on 30. You don't want to be making that much. You don't want to be making $10 an hour. So if I'm making $10 an hour, I'm just going to do it myself, because I have nothing to lose. So I quit, and I had signed a non-compete when I started at Scare Factory. And again, a situation where there shouldn't have been a non-compete. But I had learned my lesson, and so I took 2 years off, and I just sculpted, did everything on my own, and got everything in line. Had the business name, how we were going to do business. I had a business plan, 5-year business plan. Started building up my molds, which would you sculpt a monster, and then you mold it, and then they're able to do casts off of that. And that was really it. I went to the trade shows that I could never go to with Scare Factory, and I was right there competing with Scare Factory. So what ended up happening is, I went to the first trade show and I failed very badly. But again, learned so much from that experience. That I made contacts with people that I didn't sell much stuff at all, and that's why I would consider it a failure in that it was not financially successful. It was a success in that I made a few contacts. I got my name out there and learned a lot. I mean, just learn. When you actually do stuff, you just learn it. And, I attracted a couple people that wanted to be involved, and they were able to spread the work around, and we were able to grow the business like through those contacts. And so I've been doing this for 4 years. I've been on my own. So 4 years, if you want to call it 6 years, for the 2 years I was off. I also got divorced during that time. So when I quit from Scare Factory, I ended up getting divorced and completely changing Rock Factory. We shut down the business, the building we were in, which was sucking money out of the business. It was bad. It was a bad setup for a business. So I got divorced, redid that business, turned that back into something that was viable, and turned it into a better business than it was, and started Beastcraft. And I met my second wife, who I'm married to now, and whose I can't say enough good about. She's awesome.
That's a good thing. You better do that.
She's great. And, she's awesome. And that, and then, once I had the business going, which I don't know why she ever agreed to marry me when she, like on our first date, she's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm basically almost unemployed and I sculpt monsters because I want to start a monster business, And she's just like, "Okay, sounds good." And, that was good. It was a really good transition in life during that time to redo Rock Factory the way I wanted it to be done, without lawsuits and without just craziness, and start doing monsters, which is really what I wanted to do. I love teaching, but teaching was just a means to pay the student loan. It wasn't a huge passion. So when I got divorced, I landed my first real job, which was teaching. So when we ran Rock Factory, I ran into a mom who had a student that was autistic. Her son was autistic. So she brought her son to us, and he responded really well to drumming, and he really responded to the way we taught. And she said, "Hey, I got more friends." So more autistic children started coming to our school and doing well. And then that became a thing where it was like, "Hey, you guys are really good with kids on the spectrum. Have you ever thought about teaching?" And, at that point, I said, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" So I went in for an interview at a place called Oakstone, which is a very big autistic-oriented school, or kids on the spectrum school in the Columbus area. And I told them what I did, and I sat through the interview, and I got the job. So shocked that I got the job. I was surprised. And then later I found out that what actually happened was they had a massive turnover. Someone split from the school, and they were just hiring anyone who was qualified that was good. Not like just anybody. You had to do a background check to work with kids.
Right.
They were just doing a massive hiring, and they hired me. So sorry.
That's fine.
That was a hard time. I had to restrain kids. It was the hardest job I ever had, for sure. It definitely changed me as a person, and just grew me, just made me grow in such a way that is hard to explain. But it was through that job that I used my degree for the first time. So, I'm sorry. It was when I think about that job, it was the kids that I first dealt with when I was there. When you say kids on the spectrum, this was intense. It was intense. It was violence. It was scary. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, for sure. I had no idea what I was getting into when I went into that job, and it was big. It was very hard. I really don't know what else to say. I mean, the details of it, you don't want to know. But when I went into that job, that was the first time I had a salary. So I'm 30 at that point, and that was the first time that I had a salaried real job. And I remember, my family just being like blown away. They're like, "What? Dustin has a salary? Dustin has benefits? Dustin has health insurance?" And it was a big deal. And when they when I tell them what I was doing with like kids on the spectrum, they were just, everybody was just super proud of that, and it was very rewarding. But again, it really came down to doing something because you feel like it's good to do, and just doing something that's your passion. And it wasn't really my passion. But I worked with the and I can't remember the exact term, what would you call it? The intense needs. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on that. But I worked with them for a while. They found out that they had to let go of their shop teacher because he didn't have a degree, and so there was a problem with the credits the kids were getting. So they said they needed someone with a degree that was shop, and I said, "Hey, you know what? I've got a degree. It's industrial tech. That's fancy speak for shop class." And they said, "Can you teach these kids shop?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." So they gave me a classroom, and I was there for 4 years, and I taught kids shop, and it was scary, and it was intense and fun. And it was something I'll never forget. Sometimes I do miss it. I mean, like right now, like it does make me think about it. But life moves on, and I had a son, and that, he's 3 now, and it really, when you have a son or you have a kid, it brings your life into a focus that's hard to explain. It's like you have no time for anything. So you got time for your kid, you got time for your wife, and you have very little time for yourself. And so you really have to just say, you really have to think, making monsters is my passion. It's what brings me the happiness in my life. And it's what I want my son to be around when he's growing up. And so I quit teaching, and I left the school and focused 100% on Beastcraft. And that's been the last 2 years of my life, has just been my son and Beastcraft and my wife. That's it. The other thing that really played into that was sending my son to daycare was tough, because it really was, it was working to pay for daycare. It was working a job to not spend time with my son, and I could not understand. I couldn't justify it. I couldn't understand it, and I didn't have the motivation to really pursue teaching as like teaching that shop class. I couldn't see myself teaching that shop class forever. It was not normal teaching. It was very dangerous, and at some point someone was going to get hurt, and so I chose to leave and focus on Beastcraft. So that's it. And I'm glad to sit here and like go through this. This is just, leading up to this, and leading up to this interview, I knew it was going to be tough because it's a lot of stuff that I don't usually think about.
Right.
You know, so thinking about the tougher things that you go through in life, you have a way of forgetting them. You know, you're just like, you know, this is my life now, and this is how it's going to be, and you don't think about those things. And then reflecting on them it's a trip for sure.
Right. Oh yeah. So, you know, that is an awesome story, and you know, again, knowing you from when you were in school, you know, you kind of lose track of, you know, what people do and so forth. So that was really interesting to hear all of that. So as I heard about that, it was interesting that you started talking about some things that we've been talking about in class, and you talked a few times about your portfolio, and we've been talking about branding and how students, they need to be creators and they need to show other people what they can do. And, you know, now in today's world, they can put that on social media, and they have so many platforms where they can share the work that they're doing. And, you know, it sounds like that was something that was important to you. And obviously, you know, on your website, you have your catalogs where you show what you are, or the products that are available and so forth. I guess, can you talk any more about how that portfolio, maybe what you put in there, and is that something that you are continuing to add to on a daily or yearly basis, and how you share that and so forth?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. We really worked on a trade show. So we would do a trade show called Trans World. You know, we would do that every year, and that was our year. So we would just do that show, and branding is a very big deal for that. Having your catalog, having your logo, having you know, I was always into doing t-shirts and stuff, and all that stuff is very much how you present yourself. And a lot of it is like, are these props going to break down? Are these people reliable? And if you are a professional looking trade show booth, and that goes for any business that you do at a trade show is branding. A trade show is, you got 10 by 10 feet to really make an impression on people. And we really focused on that. What we did not do was we did not focus on our website and our social media. And that came, we had it set up, we had like the infrastructure, but it was like rickety. It was barely working, you know. And it wasn't a big deal to us because we did the trade show, and that's where we put our name out there, and that's where we got our business. As you know, everything has changed, and we got our trade show canceled on us 3 days before we were supposed to leave. We had built all our props. We had done everything. We had booth layout, and we had I think 30 by 10. Like, we had 3 booths that we had to fill. So they canceled it. It was like right around when they first canceled the Arnold Classic, when COVID was kicking off, and they canceled the Arnold, and we were like, boy, this is not good. Not good that they canceled the Arnold. But it's international, you know, they'll probably still have the trade show. They canceled it 3 days before we were supposed to leave. And so we scrambled to get pictures of everything, get it on our website, create the infrastructure for our online ordering, because now everything's going to be ordered online. We ramp up the social media, and we were able to pull it all off, and we were able to still save our year. Had we done all that prior, we wouldn't have had to scramble to do it. Luckily, we had it set up a little bit, so we weren't in that bad of shape. But now more than ever, everything is online, and you know, everything can be seen online that you do, which is good because it spread. You can get your name out there, you know, way faster to way more people. But you know, trade shows are important because you're getting your direct line to people who are buying stuff. You're not just getting people who are looking at stuff. A lot of times online, it's in our business, and I don't know about other businesses, but you're getting yourself out there to a lot of people, but a lot of people are just looking. So people that see your stuff aren't necessarily going to translate into money. And money is ultimately what keeps you afloat as a business. So as unfortunately, it is unfortunately that necessary that not just having 1 million followers is going to get you money. You actually have to move product. So yeah, it is very important. And that's something that we try to do in the haunted house prop industry. That's something that's not focused on. I think if you look at our website, I think you'll see like a very cohesive look. We try to make sure all the props that we do have a cohesive look, colors, just overall, just present yourself in a really good way. And I think that's very important, not just for special effects animatronics.
Right. You know, so yeah, I think that is, for students, that's really going to be huge going forward for them. And the other thing that you brought up a few times was networking. And I've been trying to stress to them how important it is to communicate with people, build relationships, etc. And you talked about how you were able to get into the Scare Factory because of that relationship that you had and so forth. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe how do you focus on building those relationships? How do you make that a priority?
So I would say, you know, I made a lot of contacts like through teaching music because that's just something that goes hand in hand. I think when you work with kids and you just show yourself to be such a good person, which I'm not, I feel like I am a good person, and I've always been very honest and forthcoming. And I think people really respond to that, and that's where I made my contacts, was just by being a genuine person. I mean, my wife that I'm married to now, I met through a parent of a student. They introduced us. You know, just random things, like you need someone to help you move. It's like you call a parent, and because you've helped their kids, they want to help you, and because you have done something for them that they value, they want to help you. And that was something that came that I did not intend. That was not my intention, but that is just something that I found over the years, was that it introduced me to a lot of people, and it gave me a personal connection with a lot of people. Where I failed, and where I think your students would do well to know, is that you just need to get out there. And I think, you know, that story where I said I went to Scare Factory and no one was there, so I never went back because it was such a weird experience. That's a mistake. I mean, I should have gone back. And networking can just be going up to someone and introducing yourself and saying, like, this is what I'm into, what are you into? And just making friendships and you know, connecting with people through that way. That's something I always struggled with. I was always like kind of afraid to talk to people. I was like, I know that's hard to believe probably as my teacher. It was easier for me to be outlandish than it was for me to be serious and try to connect with people on a serious matter of like trying to have a career, trying to you know, have an objective. And that's something that you have to do, and you cannot care what people will think of you, because you can't let your own inner thoughts get in the way of that. And that was a big thing that I did. And if someone is not going to like you, or they're going to think you're annoying, that's what they're going to think. And you cannot worry about that, because that's going to hamper or put a damper on what you're trying to do. And if you want to get yourself out there, like whatever it is, photography, going to an event that is photography focused, talking to people, putting your stuff into shows and hearing feedback from people. You never know who's going to give you feedback. That might be someone that will hire you to photograph something that they just like your personality. And you know, it's not about trying to be likable. It's just about being yourself, being willing to tell people what you're interested in, talk about what you're interested in and to hear what they are interested in. You don't want to overtalk people and just be like, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I'm really into this, and I'm also into this, and I'm also into this. Hire me. It's, just making normal connections with people and taking interest in what they like and connecting with people and not making the objective like, I'm going to talk to this person so that they know about me and they will hire me. It's more about, hey, I'm just going to talk to this person because we might have some common ground. And if you approach it that way, I think you will find that people respond to it better, and you will eventually make connections that are going to lead you to where you want to be with your career.
Perfect. So as you think about Beastcraft and where you'd like to see it go, I mean, would you love to see someday that Beastcraft props are in a movie, or are you going to continue to stick with, haunted houses, things like that? What are you thinking about in the future for your company?
I have always wanted to do movies, always. Like ever since from high school, that was my first thing, was going to California to do movies. And then as things transpired, I became being in Ohio, set roots in Ohio. I am going to be in Ohio for a long time, and that's just where my life has led me. And there isn't much of a market for effects in Ohio. But we always try to do different projects. Like projects come along where people want stuff for photography. And we always try to take those. So we have done props where they're specifically made for a photo that someone wants to take or capture. And we have like a movie that one of the guys I work with is working on right now. And we're helping him like with the props and trying to support him as he goes through that. But that is just, that's an independent film that we're doing it on our own again. So it's like you don't have that opportunity to do that kind of stuff. You just have to make your own opportunities, which is something I'm big on, is if you can't get the opportunity, don't wait for it. Just do it. I think you'll be happy with where it leads. And that's one of those things where the industry is very hard to get into. It's very hard to get into special effects. There's a lot of people who want to do it. There's a lot of people who do sculpture. I mean, if you go on Instagram, it's a huge thing right now. Everybody wants to make monsters. I shouldn't say everybody. I shouldn't say everybody in the whole world wants to make monsters. Everything is connected on a way that just never was before. And I think that's, going back to the school thing where it's like I had the student loan and just trying to always point people in a direction of no creative school. Don't do creative school. Free internships. You can work for people for free for years and still be money ahead of of doing school and having a student loan. And you can learn way more. And you never have to deal with that. And like I said, the Art Institute is closed down. There's still a couple. There's Tom Savini, which I am a big no. Anyone asks, no Tom Savini school. Absolute waste of money. There is Stan Winston School. Stan Winston School has survived the switch with the internet. I shouldn't say the dawning of the internet, because the internet's been around a long time, but really the development of the internet. If you go to Sam Winston School, they do a lot of videos that you can buy, just like you can buy DVDs, you can buy books, and they do a thing where you can subscribe and you can watch videos online, and you pay your monthly subscription. You have access to a library of how-to videos. And that's really, I think, very smart on their part, because YouTube, because Instagram, because Facebook, all of these things are really tools for anyone who wants to do creative stuff. You can find people who are willing to share that information and give it to you to use and learn on your own and do your own thing. And so when I went to school, I went down that path, and I do look back on it and do say it definitely was a hard choice, borderline mistake. I don't know if I could have done it any other way at that time, but now there are so many other options. If you want to do photography, if you want to do painting, if you want to do graphic design, you can do these things on your own, and you can get out there and you can get internships, and you'll be much further ahead. That being said, I do have to say, there are people that I know that have gone to the art institutes that went on to do jobs where they make a decent living. Mark Van Horn, I believe, graduated from Van Buren. He went to the Art Institute, and he is a videographer. Like, he worked for a news station. I think he's doing well. So there are success stories. My ex-wife went to the CCAD, and she went for graphic design. She was hugely successful. I mean, she made a lot of money doing package design for limited brands. But it's almost like going to astronaut school. Like, there's only a few people that are going to make it through that hole. There's only so many jobs, and the odds are very against you. So, I would not discourage anybody from doing a creative career, but I would definitely, like you said, focus on your portfolio, focus on your contacts, and focus on your social media presence, and just get out there and do it. And I think you'll find success.
Perfect. So the last question I ask every time is, what's something that you know now about careers that you wish you had known when you were in high school?
Oh my gosh. Everything. If I could go back, I would have so much to tell my younger self. It's just unbelievable. The takeaways, I would say, number one, don't do creative school. Number two, don't sign non-competes. And number three, I think, would be almost maybe the most important, would be to, if you have a passion and you want to pursue it, just do it. Don't worry about how much money you're going to make or how much money you are making. I think that's like something that I fell into and had a hard time with when I graduated, as I really felt as though I was letting my parents down or letting my teachers down. If I didn't graduate college and I didn't have a good job and I wasn't able to pay my bills, I felt like a failure in a lot of ways. And really, you have to just shed that. That is not true. If you have a passion that you believe in and you are fresh out of high school, you're fresh out of college, do it. Just do it. Don't go on tangents, and don't be distracted, because you're going to come back to it, and you're going to come back to it, and you're going to be further behind than you would have been if you would have just stuck to what you believed in.
Perfect.
That's best advice I could give.
Yep, I think that is some very, very good advice. So, Dustin, I greatly appreciate it. I loved hearing your story. I love the experiences that you've had, and I think we can learn so much from you. So I wish you hadn't had to go through some of the tough times that you did, but we're going to benefit from that, and my students are going to benefit from that. So I really appreciate that. I hope that everything continues to go really well with Beastcraft. And I hope that, I'll continue to follow you and hopefully see you be very, very successful into the future. So thank you again very, very much.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. And I hope anyone who's watching this got something out of it. That's all I can hope.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you to Dustin for talking with me today. And if you'd like to learn more about his business, you can go to beastcraftprops.com for more information. Have a great day, and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode of Interviewing People.